What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we're finishing up our talks on the Cavalier Fighter. We of course did a ranking earlier this week, and it passed enough to get a build this week, so I'm very excited to show you what I have for you this week. It's going to be a really fun build, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it. If so, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please help us to reach our goal of 2,000 by the end of this year. We're only about 150 off, so we are very well within the possibility of getting there, but of course I need your help. Then click the bell once you have done that so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. So the Cavalier Fighter is very interesting because it brings up an interesting type of playstyle. This seems to focus on mounted combat. However, as we discussed in Wednesday's video earlier this week, that's not necessarily what you have to do with this. Yes, all of these features would work if you are mounted, and they would work very well if you were mounted, but they work just as well if you are not mounted, minus one third level feature that is specific to mounted combat. So this is actually somewhat versatile in what it can and cannot do, and that makes this a somewhat compelling option. Is it the most busted thing in the world? No, it's not the Battlemaster Fighter. It is not that strong. I ranked it just kind of in the middle. It's mediocre. It's good enough to get by, but it's not the worst thing. It's not going to break any records. It is what it is. What this does excel at is being a tank. And so we are going to do what we can to make ourselves as sturdy as we can. But we also are going to focus on making sure that we can keep our friends alive at the same time through the use of a bunch of different class features. And so without any further ado, let's jump into today's build. Starting off, we have our race, and I am for once not going variant human or custom lineage. I really love the ability that I have as a fighter to actually get all of the feats and ASIs that I want because we get the extras along the way. That allows me to really pick a really nice race in order to get some really cool features rather than having to worry about, well, did I get this feat in time? I'm not going to get enough ASIs, all that good stuff. We can actually do something different here, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. So I went with a very interesting race. We're going to use the Monsters of the Multiverse version of this race, and we're going to go with the Shifter. Now, the Shifter is one of those that is not used a ton. I do have one at my table currently for our Curse of Strahd campaign, which is going to be over in just a few weeks, which is so sad, but the final fight is going to be probably like second week of December, so I'm very sad but that's going to be over very soon. But the Shifter is very cool. So as a bonus action, you can shift similarly to kind of like Rage, sort of, but you get some temporary HP, which is good. You also get a specific feature depending on which sub-race that you choose. Now, obviously, the terminology of sub-race isn't really a thing anymore, but I mean, that's what it is, right? And you have 4 choices here. Now, for me, I would definitely prefer going with the Beast Hide on this one, because when you are shifted, you get a +1 to your AC. However, 2 of the other options are also not terrible. At the same time, we have the Wild Hunt. Wild Hunt allows you to not be attacked with advantage, which can be pretty interesting if you are knocked prone. Doesn't matter, that melee attack is not going to be at advantage. If your DM is using a barbarian against you and it goes reckless, doesn't matter. And so this allows you to really be a lot bulkier in that sense. Now, obviously, this would be nice if we were going with a barbarian multi-class on this build. We actually are not going to be going barbarian on this build at all, so that's why I'm not doing it. If you did want to go barbarian, I probably would suggest going with that one instead. That you'll probably get a little bit more use out of that. And finally, Swift Stride isn't the worst either. However, I do think that Swift Stride would be a lot better if we could wait and change our type of shifter until way later, because this would help us get off our level 15 ability in Fighter. But man, I'm not going to choose a race that I don't get the synergy with what I'm looking for until level 15. That is a complete waste in my book. And so we're not even going to do that. We're going to go with the Beast Hide for this one, but just know that there are other options out there for you to choose from. As far as our stats, of course, we're going with our modified standard array as always on the channel. And of course, if you're using point buy or regular standard array, rolled stats, anything like that, just prioritize the top 3, and then the bottom 3 you can really do whatever you want unless a build calls for something specific otherwise. So for me, I'm going to put my 17 in strength, I'm going to put my 15 in constitution, my 13 in dexterity, my 12 in wisdom, 10 in charisma, and 8 in intelligence. Now the bottom 3 really don't matter, but I would put intelligence as the highest of those numbers just because wisdom saving throws are somewhat common in comparison to your intelligence and charisma. So that's probably where you're going to want to put that. But we're really focusing on all of the physical stats: strength, con, and our dex, of course. So we're going to get a lot of really cool benefits out of each of these. And what's awesome is that with Monsters of the Multiverse, if we have 3 odd numbers, we can put 3 plus 1s across the board from our racial. So we can go with an 18 strength, 16 con, and 12 dex, which is really, really nice to start out with overall. For equipment, I would take, and this is going to be interesting, I would take a rapier, I would take a shield, and then the heaviest armor that you can take right now, probably chainmail, I would imagine. But eventually you're going to want to work up to full plate once you can afford it, because of course that's super expensive. And then of course, if you can get your hands on a horse, then that would be great. And of course, assuming that horse doesn't die, you would love to get some heavy armor for the horse too, which is even more expensive. Just down the road when you can get it. I know that's not going to be for a while because that stuff is really, really expensive, but you know, you'll get it eventually. That's pretty much it as far as equipment goes. Honestly, I don't need a whole lot. You might be wondering why I'm taking a rapier over, say, like a long sword or a great sword or something like that. I want something one-handed to be able to use a shield because I want my AC to be as high as possible. Me dying doesn't help anyone else around me. I can't protect anyone if I'm dead. And so I need to make sure that I am as sturdy as possible. And of course, we have a decent dexterity modifier, which is nice. Of course, again, I would love to have taken some barbarian levels to get danger sense, but we're just not going to be able to do that on this build because with rage, I can't wear heavy armor. So that's a no-go for me. So we're not doing that. So overall, I think we're in a good spot though. I think that the equipment that we have is fine. We are more focused on protecting our allies and us not going down. That's the focus here. So as far as damage numbers, don't expect anything crazy, at least any more so than any other type of fighter build. So with all that out of the way, let's start taking some levels. At level 1, we're going to be a Fighter 1. We're starting off with Fighter because it's one of the best starts in the game that we can possibly hope for. It gives us that heavy armor proficiency right off the bat, so we can go ahead and pick up probably some chainmail right now, which is good. And of course, we're going to upgrade down the line. We also get fighting style here, and man, there are a bunch of them that I really, really like here. Number 1, defense. The defense fighting style, super simple, but having a +1 to AC is always going to be a good thing, especially on top of our shift that we can already do. So that's a +2 to AC, assuming we're shifted. So that's really, really nice. And so you're going to have a really sturdy AC right now. And that feels really, really good. Dueling is okay. Dueling, of course, would give you a little bit of a damage boost on your weapon. Like I said, we're not focused so much on damage on this build. If you wanted to go with that route, that's fine. I'm not going to recommend that as my top choice. Interception is one that I've seen people suggest for this subclass. I think it's redundant with warding maneuver, so I'm going to say don't take that one. Protection is fine. I definitely can understand taking protection. And then finally, superior technique to grab menacing attack could be interesting because this would give disadvantage on everything and not just creatures that are not you. And that would also help you for when creatures leave your radius at early levels when you don't have a way to lock them down. They still would have disadvantage. So that's definitely something to consider overall. I think that's a really solid option. For these purposes, I'm going to go with defense, but just know that those other options are totally viable. We also get second wind, which is a nice little bonus action heal. Spoiler alert, we're going to have a ton to do on our bonus action. So basically you should be using your bonus action for something every single turn, and you're going to get a lot of use out of it, and that's going to feel really, really good. At Fighter 2, you're going to get Action Surge, and so of course we can now take 2 actions, which is always going to be better than 1. At level 3, we get our subclass, of course, and we're going to pick up our 3 features from that. Bonus Proficiency, which of course you're going to pick up Animal Handling if you're using a mount. Keep in mind, you don't have to use a mount. So, I mean, if your mount dies, it's not the worst thing in the world. Just get you a new one as soon as you can, assuming you're even using that playstyle. You could be someone that just likes horses, but you don't want to take it into battle because you're afraid that it'll die. That's totally fine. Whatever your story wants to be, that's all you. But you can totally take Animal Handling or any of the other skills that are on the list. All of them are good outside of a couple of the charisma based ones, so you can really make it your own. We also get Born to the Saddle, and this of course makes us a better horse rider. Of course, if you want any kind of details on this, then of course this is all in Wednesday's video earlier this week, iCard above right there. And finally, Unwavering Mark. Unwavering Mark is our big feature that I'm really focused on, and it allows us to mark targets that are within 5 feet of us, and that allows us to give them disadvantage on everyone but us. We're trying to bring in all of the attacks, right? And so a high AC is going to be absolutely essential on this build in order to negate as much of those attacks as we possibly can. At Fighter 4, we get our first ASI or feat, and I think everyone knows exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take the Sentinel feat. We discussed this a lot in Wednesday's video, how the Sentinel feat is redundant with something that we get here in this subclass. But honestly, it's too good for me to not take it. Sentinel is what allows me to more effectively lock targets down within 5 feet of me in order to make my Unwavering Mark work. Obviously, you know, normally they would be able to just disengage and run away, or they could just take the opportunity attack and run away. Either way, then they are just back to normal and nothing happens, right? So either they used their action and didn't take any damage, or they possibly took a little bit of damage and they can still get around it anyway. Sentinel ends up leaving them with a lose-lose situation. If they disengage, I still get to hit them. If they attack my friend who is nearby, I still get to hit them. Any of that stuff allows me to lock them down within 5 feet of me and make sure that they are staying safe. And that is the entire point of what it is that we are trying to do. So Sentinel is absolutely necessary. At Fighter 5, we get extra attack. 2 attacks are always better than 1, especially when we can now mark more than 1 target. Of course, we do get the opportunity to make a bonus action attack on our turn should they get around our Unwavering Mark. So we still get a nice benefit either way, but discouraging attacks on others is our whole point, and I think we're doing that pretty effectively. At Fighter 6 is where I hit a bit of a crossroads, and this is where we get another ASI or feat. There are a couple of directions that I could see going with this build as far as feats go and as far as ASIs go, and I want to present a few options here because these are going to affect this section and it's going to affect our next feat that we take as well. So at level 6, what I'm going to recommend is taking the feat Heavy Armor Master. Now, yes, this is a trash feat normally. I understand it's a bad feat. It reduces damage by, I believe it's only 3, as long as you're wearing armor, and it is from non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, slashing. The thing is, number 1, it's a half feat, so we can get a +1 in strength. Yes, that's going to leave us on an odd number, but we will fix that later, which is why I'm pairing these two with our level 8 ASIs. We get that kind of resilience, which is going to be absolutely amazing for us. We really don't want to be taking any damage if we can, while also making sure that our party members don't take damage. And that's really tough, right? This allows us to negate some of that damage, and 90% of the damage you're going to be taking is bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Now, it being non-magical is a little more restrictive, but I mean, you're at level 6. I would imagine that you're not running into too many magic bows at this point being shot at you, or too many magic swords being slashed at you. Maybe a few, but for the most part, you're probably looking at non-magical damage. And so this is going to allow you to be a little bit more healthy, especially as we gain more and more hit points over the course of this build. The other option here, of course, would be to go ahead and give a +2 to our strength. And of course, maxing out strength, or at least getting it closer to max if you're using a different stat array, would be really, really great here. Of course, that'd make it easier for us to hit. That would allow us to deal a little bit more damage. The biggest thing is that we want to be able to hit all of our attacks because that allows us to leave our marks. And the marks are what are really going to be saving our friends. So that is also a really good option. Thirdly, you could take Mounted Combatant, and Mounted Combatant would only really be what I would take here if I'm focused on doing things that are with a horse or with some other type of mount. Mounted combat is really nice. It gives you a ton of movement options and of course gives you basically a free dash disengage. And so that's really cool. Yes, the horse isn't going to make its own attack, but like, I don't care. If I can disengage essentially for free and have nearly double my movement speed, that's more than worth it to me. As far as riding on a horse and maybe eventually you can get a war horse or something like that, that would be awesome. And so Mounted Combatant is going to be an absolute necessity if you are really focusing on mounted combat. If you're not using a mount and you're using all of these features just to protect your friends, obviously don't worry about this because then it doesn't really affect you. So those are our 3 starting points here. And so then I'm going to pair those each with something else at level 8. At level 7, we get our warding maneuver, and this is what allows us to protect our allies a lot easier as far as giving them resistance should something get around our features. And so that's really, really nice as well. Again, lots of details on Wednesday's video. At Fighter 8, we get, of course, another ASIR feat. And so if you took Heavy Armor Master last time, I would now take Slasher this time. Them only being 2 levels apart is really, really nice because I don't feel nearly as bad about having that odd number of strength score because it's only really for 2 levels. Then I'm right back. And Slasher is, of course, a half feat, but the biggest thing about Slasher is 1, it works with our rapier, and 2, it lessens movement speed for enemies, so it's harder for them to run away, which means if we miss our opportunity attack for them to run away and miss out on our Sentinel, we can chase them down more easily and lock them down and effectively kill them, or at least help our friends out in the process of killing them. So that's all really good, and that's really my preferred route on this. If you took the +2 to strength last time, I would take one of 2 feats, either Mounted Combatant if you are using a mount, or the Tough feat if you are not. And of course, if you took Mounted Combatant last time, I would take the Tough feat here. Either way, having more HP is never going to be a bad thing, and I am always going to recommend the Tough feat on pretty much any build that you make, because being more resilient is always going to be a good thing, and you could always take Tough later on down the road too, to combo with that Heavy Armor Master should you go that route as well. But my preferred method is Heavy Armor Master and Slasher. So at level 9, now that we have 8 levels of Fighter, I think it's time for us to start looking elsewhere, because I think that there are some really cool features that we can get from other classes, or well, in this case, just one other class, that can really help us in protecting our friends and protecting ourselves. And so I'm going to end up going with the Rouge. I'm going to end up going with the Rogue, and the Rogue is going to give us some really cool benefits. Number 1, sneak attack, of course, and of course we're using a rapier, so even though we're using strength to make the attack, it is still a finesse weapon, which means it does qualify for sneak attack. Are we going to get sneak attack all the time? Probably not. But sneak attack honestly is not even our biggest concern when it comes to taking this overall. Taking the rogue levels is really more focused on what I'm allowed to multiclass into based on what stats I have, and being able to only worry about dexterity but still get some really cool features is kind of where this is born. So sneak attack, it'll be nice when you get it, but I'm not going to really be relying on it as far as dealing a bunch of damage. We're not taking enough levels of rogue in order for it to make a huge difference overall, so don't count on sneak attack going absolutely nuts on this build. That's not what this is for. We also of course get Thieves' Cant here at level 1, as well as expertise, which allows us to be even better at our, you guessed it, animal handling, which I would imagine that is one of the ones that you placed that on. At level 2 of Rogue, we get Cunning Action, which gives us even more to do on our bonus action. This is going to really help us to be able to dash, disengage, and hide even if we don't have a mount. So that's one thing that's really cool. If our mount is gone or we're just not using one, then we can actually disengage ourselves, which is cool, especially coming up with the level 15 feature where we're wanting to charge. This is kind of setting up for that. Obviously, we can use this in plenty of other ways besides just that feature, but this gives us a way to get out of melee and right back in to get that charge feature going, and it makes it a lot easier on us. We're not going to have to take nearly as many attacks, which I'm always going to be a fan of. At level 3, we of course get to choose our subclass, just like with Fighter, and I went through a lot of these. There are a few that are really, really nice. I actually almost went with Soul Knife, if I'm being honest, because I thought Soul Knife would be interesting in giving us a ranged option. Now, obviously, the ranged option isn't all that great just because we need to be within 5 feet in order for our mark to work, and so that's not really a thing, but that could be a cool flavor point. I'm not sure how you would work that out story-wise, but that's not what we ended up doing. I thought about it for about 2 seconds and I was like, man, that'd be neat. And then it was like, no, that's kind of stupid. What we're going to actually go with is the Arcane Trickster. The Arcane Trickster, of course, is one of the most popular rogues out there because you get spells. So yes, normally fighters don't get access to spells, and so it's a little bit different, but you know what? I think this is really cool, and I think we can get some really awesome spells out of this, as well as Mage Hand Legerdemain. Mage Hand Legerdemain, of course, allows us to have the best Mage Hand in the game, which is awesome. Mage Hand is already one of the best cantrips, and so we get to make it even better, which is fantastic. But we also get access to a lot of different spells, and we're going to make a lot of use out of these spells. Number one, we get some cantrips here. Of course, Mage Hand is one that we get, and the second one you already know is going to be Booming Blade. Booming Blade, of course, is an awesome cantrip that allows you to hit a target within 5 feet of you with your weapon, and it is now locked down. So you're going to deal a little bit of extra damage with it. Then it is basically filled with this thunderous energy. If it goes to run away, then not only do you get to make an opportunity attack and get to stop it in its tracks possibly, if it does make it away from you, it's going to take some damage. And so it's kind of a lose-lose situation. It's either attack your friends at disadvantage, try to run away and possibly still have to attack friends at disadvantage, or actually do get away but take some damage anyway. So we're creating a lot of lose-lose situations once we can close the distance with our enemies. And so this ends up creating a really, really fun challenge for your DM to have to deal with, and I absolutely love it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to do that. And as far as the third one that you get, pick your favorite. It's not a huge deal. Just make sure you don't choose any spells that have to do with a saving throw or any kind of an attack roll, because it is going to fail every time, because we do not have the stat points to boost up our intelligence. Even if I had put that in the place of our wisdom stat, it's a no-go. So just take something that just gives you some nice out of combat utility, maybe something having to do with your horse or something, and so just go from there. That's all we need. As far as first level spells go, we get 3, and we are going to be able to choose amongst the entire wizard spell list. One spell that we choose can be from any school that we want. However, the other 2 have to be from either the enchantment or illusion spell lists, so we are a little limited in that case. However, we're not so limited that I don't have any options. Number 1, Silvery Barbs. We get to pick up Silvery Barbs as a fighter, which just feels nice. This is going to be the ultimate way to protect your allies. If you can't get right next to your ally and they're getting attacked with something, this allows you to stop that roll and give advantage to either yourself or someone else on another roll, and that is awesome. And if that's not a great way to protect somebody, especially if they get crit, you can say, no, roll that die again. You're not getting crit, you're going to survive, and you might even have resistance to it depending on positioning. And so that's really cool. And I think that that's going to be really, really nice in helping you protect your allies. As far as protecting yourself, we're going to pick our spell that doesn't really matter what spell list we pick it from, and that's going to be the shield spell. Shield, of course, will boost our AC by 5 here, and I would imagine by this point you probably do have some plate armor, maybe even some +1 or +2 plate armor. If you are really lucky, then you're looking really, really nice. Between defense and shift, you're going to be really hard to hit, especially with shield, and holding a shield, yeah, you're going to be really difficult to kill, and we love that. And then finally, pick your favorite on the third one. Again, no attack rolls or saving throws, just something that's nice for out of combat, that kind of thing will always be really helpful. At this level, I thought about possibly taking one more level of Rogue, and the reason is because there's an ASI right there. We get another spell and spell slot, which is very important as well. And so I really wanted to take a fourth level of Rogue. And if you want to, by all means, do it. You're not going to get any extra sneak attack, but I mean, another ASI here is good. And of course, being able to use your spells more often and get one more spell, always a good thing. However, I want to be able to get a second action surge and more importantly, a third use of Indomitable, because we've got a really great AC, but we may not always be the best on the saving throws. We're decent at con saves, we're decent at dex saves, we're meh at wisdom saves, so we may end up failing some of those common saves, and so this is kind of what I'm trying to prevent here. And so Indomitable is going to be a really nice way to clutch out some of those where you roll poorly. So we're going to go back to Fighter, and we are not going to look back. At Fighter 9, we get our first use of Indomitable, speaking of which, and so this allows us to re-roll a saving throw, which is going to be really good if it happens to be something really important, if we're going to take a bunch of damage or anything like that. Really nice. At Fighter 10, we get Hold the Line, which is okay. At Fighter 11, we get a second round of extra attack, which is not a bad thing either. Again, what's better than attacking twice? Attacking 3 times, and we are always going to be about that. At Fighter 12, we get an ASI or a feat, and if you didn't get the chance to take any of the options from last time, maybe clean that up now. If you are already good on all of that, boost Constitution. Just getting more health is going to be nice. Boosting con saves is going to be good. Not that we are worrying about losing concentration or anything, but con saves are somewhat common, so you want to be as good at those as you possibly can. At Fighter 13, we get our second round of Indomitable, which is nice. At Fighter 14, I would just boost con again. Just getting that up as high as you possibly can. Of course, these are also levels where if you did not get to boost your strength earlier and you're still behind on it because you're using a different method of stats, this could be the place to max that out as well. So just whatever your table needs. At level 15, we can finally get Ferocious Charger, which is so late to be getting this here at level 18, but it's still really nice. And of course, this does combo with our Cunning Action, so we can always back ourselves up and run right back in and make that attack again, and then stay within 5 feet in order to make sure that our mark counts, which is really good. At level 16, I actually would consider either rounding out stats if you haven't maxed out strength or con. If you have, and you're already happy with everything, I would probably take the mobile feat. The mobile feat is going to make you a lot quicker on the battlefield, and it is going to make it a lot easier for you to be able to close the distance with the targets that you are looking at. If you do not need this, if you're using some immortal horse or a griffin or a flying unicorn or whatever you're doing by now, then wait till the honorable mentions, and I have some extras for you there possibly. And finally, at level 20, Fighter 17, we're going to get our second round of Action Surge and third round of Indomitable. So that is our build for today. Is it anything flashy? No, but is it effective? I think so. I think it's a nice protector. It's not meant to be dealing a ton of damage. It is there to prevent damage on your friends. And to that end, I think we're doing all right. And so that is going to be a really fun way to do this. As far as honorable mentions go, I have a few. And so we're going to go through those really quickly. Number 1, the Swashbuckler Rogue is a really interesting option, being able to get away from your target easier if you hit them on an attack. The reason that I say this is this could set you up for another charge if you needed to. Now, obviously you can only charge once per turn, but you could always make one regular attack, then back up, and then make it again and not have to use your bonus action in order to disengage. So that could be interesting. Attack once, back up, and then charge in and take your second one. So that's an option if you wanted to change up your strategy a little bit, and that doesn't cost you your bonus action. You're then free to do whatever you want there with doing something else. The Undead Warlock would be actually a really nice one, actually, because we can then do a fear effect around us, and I really like that as well. Definitely giving us some really cool options. The War Cleric, of course, is really nice, but Again, that clouds our bonus action, which is already incredibly crowded at the moment. The Totem Warrior Barbarian is another one that I really wanted to take because, of course, how bulky it is. We, of course, would not have been able to use heavy armor, but Rage would have given us some resistance, and we would have done a little bit of extra damage with Rage. We could have gotten Danger Sense out of it, which would have helped with our dex saves. A lot of really cool stuff that we could have gotten by going to Bear Totem. And finally, Paladin. Most Paladins would have actually worked here. I'm going to suggest the Conquest Paladin over the others, but there are a few others that would be nice. The Conquest Paladin is really, really good because eventually, if you took enough levels, which is a lot of levels, you could have taken Find Greater Steed. And Find Greater Steed would have been really, really cool for you in order to have this awesome, possibly flying mount for you to go and murder everything with. And so that would have been a lot of fun. As far as feats go, of course, if you didn't take the mobile feat there at level 19, I would have taken the Mage Slayer feat. Mage Slayer is one that I really wanted to fit on this build because it's not the worst, but it is obviously situational. If you're dealing with a low magic campaign where there aren't hardly any spellcasters, do not take this feat because then it's going to be complete trash. But if your DM has a thing for creating all kinds of spellcasters and just is somebody who is the forever DM and never gets to build a spellcaster, this may be your chance to shut all that down. And so that could be a really interesting option. The other option I thought of is possibly going with Fighting Initiate in order to pick up a second fighting style. This would allow you to take things like defense and protection, or defense and superior technique, which allows you to have some more fear options. Fear is a really nice status for this subclass because, again, we're imposing disadvantage and making sure that enemies cannot hit their attacks, or at least suffer when trying to hit their attacks, is our main goal. And so fear is a really easy way to do that, and menacing attack, of course, gives us a really reliable way to do that, although be it once per short rest. Finally, as far as other races go, I have 3 options. Number 1 is the Hill Dwarf. The Hill Dwarf is a really fun take, and of course is really resilient in having extra HP, and it's just a lot of fun being a dwarf, right? I know it's not everybody's first option. I know some people are just dwarves for life, but it's not everybody's first option. But I mean, dwarves are fun. Come on, they're a lot of fun. The second option is the Earth Genasi, and the reason why I like the Earth Genasi is because you get to cast Blade Ward as a bonus action. And Blade Ward is a really nice spell, again, giving us resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. Of course, this will be redundant with a Barbarian multiclass, but this is really, really good. And I really like this feature, being able to be that much more resilient and take hits should we be put in a weird situation. And finally, the last one that I'm going to suggest for you is going to be the Leonin. The Leonin is one of the better races for this because, again, short range fear effect as a bonus action. A lot of races get a action fear effect. I don't want to use my action, especially when I'm a fighter. I don't want to do that. I'm going to use my action to hit stuff and mark it. So being able to do a bonus action fear effect is going to be really, really handy, and that is where that comes in. So that is all for today's build. I hope you guys enjoyed. Next week, we start talking about the Champion Fighter. Again, we will be 1 day late on our uploads next week, so just keep that in mind, Wednesday and Saturday, and then we should be back to normal after that for, I believe that's the week of Thanksgiving, which is crazy how fast this year has gone. Until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.